seated and established and ready to dialogue with one another, let me invite Professor Kim to, first of all, open the session by responding to the queries that Professor Gensler offered.
I'd like to thank both speakers, actually, for being incredibly clear, specific, and challenging. And the specific questions, of which I noted 4, and I'll try to answer very quickly. What do we do about Protestant translations, liberation theology translations? I'm not offering a new concept or anything. I'm playing with an idea that I found, that I came across almost by accident. But if I were playing with that now, I would see those translations as giving more directionality, more scope to the language of the other, and thereby the culture of the other, and not particularly a fundamental challenge to the model. We could work within it. How did I get to the Arab Spring? That's a more complicated answer, and it's a serious answer. I've been going through a process of massive déjà vu while hearing you here. Sometime in about 1984, I gave up flirting with the Harvard University Comparative Literature Department, or grad school, and decided to go back to Europe and finish my doctorate there. And there were several reasons for that, and one then, as indeed now, was a certain discontent with the level of abstraction in the discourse. And I now see that as something that's very possible because of the way the American university system is structured, and is far more difficult in Europe to achieve, despite the massive contradictions of the French producing abstraction at the drop of a hat. I needed, and I still need, to do something that is socially engaged in a very practical way. I enjoy training translators, doing that hands-on thing. At the moment, I do research for the Directorate General for Translation of the European Commission. I'm seeking out ways in which I can engage in discussion and work in the production of knowledge to improve the societies around us. And I haven't had the luxury that I've just had for the past hour or so of hearing very abstract conceptual work. I feel, honestly, rather inadequate and unable to reply on that level, since in my life I've sought other modes of engagement. But I've tried to do so. It's strangely become very important to me, not because of any descriptive allegiance or necessity for empiricism, but questions such as, how does modernity move? How did the aspiration to generalized agency reach Northern Africa and other parts of the Arabic world? And the need to underline that it's not something that has been manipulated from the West. It's not something that's been done in the past year. These things have been long coming, not the least to do with the number of young people in those countries educated in Europe, and its European aspirations, which, the long and the short of it, have been communicated over a long period and through very, very complex nodes in networks, as we pointed out. The point of the story of Haji Baba was to illustrate that complexity and to use a little piece of literary history, not because I have had a fling with comp lit in the past, but because I'm trying to see contemporary movements in those terms, to stop us from jumping to quick judgments about who is pulling which strings and do we really know who the people in power are at any given moment. So the appeal to complexity is important for me within an environment of direct engagement and not from an armchair position of abstraction, which you enjoy better than I at the moment. There was another question about, I don't want to create or associate everything Christian with modernity. This is a reflection that's come about from engagement in recent years with the situation in South Africa, especially, where the presence of a Christian culture, a missionary culture, more in the English than the Afrikaner tradition, however, is associated with education, is associated with the alphabetization, the literacy in languages, in the indigenous languages. And it's not by accident that input of modernity in that strict political sense has led to the situation where the languages which are now official languages in South Africa, apart from English and Afrikaans, are the ones that had complete or near complete Bible translations. That the choices made in that initial translation exercise, which was a transfer of modernity, the aspiration of modernity to those countries, has had a direct result in which languages have achieved status as official languages of the country. But I would never associate Christianity with modernity in the general sense. It's just in some situations that has come about, and those are situations that we should bear in mind. I have many colleagues who will not, for example, cooperate at all with any religious institution, simply on secular principle. I, for one, am not in complete agreement with them. There was also a question, very, very nicely put, is collaboration, co-option. That's made me think. You're saying that if we are engaged in collaborating with, working with somebody in a project, are we necessarily within that system? I've been happy enough for many decades, 2 decades now, with a quite simple neoclassical principle of cooperation, which is neither of those terms. We can work with each other on projects not because we identify with each other, not because we share each other's reading, not because we have anything particularly in common, and certainly not because we have a level playing field or no power relation. As long as there is a benefit for all parties in the interaction will proceed. And the simple model of mutual benefits is neoclassical cooperation theory, negotiation theory these days, has served me well enough. I thereby get rid of a lot of concerns about initial meaning, for example, shared experience, be it the languaging experience. I mean, these are lovely, beautiful ideas, but in the practical work I'm doing, I haven't needed much more than the simple idea of mutual benefits. Something for you, something for me. As long as you're getting something, it'll be different from what I get and of a different dimension, but as long as we both or all parties think we are gaining something, interaction can proceed. So I'm still here. Thank you.
I'll just go down the line and see what I can say. Now, the gender work, the sort of concrete work with women and gay and lesbians and queers and transsexuals. This is not just international civil society, we all do it. And when I said that gendering is not open to agential probing, I was talking about a distinction that Judith Butler also makes between the agent and the subject. And we've been making this distinction now for some time. And this distinction showed itself when I was talking about what you do and this supplementation business. So the agency is institutionally validated action, and we must train the intending subject to do it and do it well. That is concrete work, as he was describing. That is agency. On the other hand, if agency forgets that there is a subjectship which is constructed, which is not socially constructed so much as I was saying, it's the psychic machinery, political background, parents, you name it. I can't even begin to say all the things that make the outlines of the subject inaccessible to the agent. So therefore, when I said that gendering is not open to agential probing, it's because they are two. It's like you can't tell the time by the theory of relativity. It's not possible. And if you tried, you're making a mistake. So that's what I was meaning. Okay. As for the originary condition of possibility of meaning by something that doesn't is not meaningful. This notion, the easiest way to understand this is now is information theory. So it's the digitization of meaning, the production of it. I mean, so I have said, in fact, at the last MLA that this the programming in computer programming is an empirical representation of the metapsychological, differing, separating the individual, all the digital freedom in the world, and that stuff, the program that produces it. So this is, now from that point of view, I was saying that people have had this, and I mentioned in the talk that I didn't read, neither of you mentioned this, so I'm going to mention it. Saussure was a teacher of Sanskrit linguistics. I'm not a nationalist, but this is to show how far it goes. The 5th century BC linguist, philosopher, maverick, madman, Bhartrihari, had a theory of the sphota, which is also like this, that there is Saussure's chapter on linguistic value also puts this forth, but the easiest way to understand it is through information theory. I'm going to go to Switzerland sometime, if I can get some time together, to see what exactly Saussure was reading when he was being, nobody particularly has worked on this, when he was working on his doctorate. But at any rate, so that condition of possibility of meaning does not really, neither relates nor doesn't relate to gendering. They're two different kinds of things. Like, I'm sitting here, we are all talking, we are all thinking, but our bodies are producing urine. So I have to go and come back, right? They're related but not related. Okay, so it's a relationship. I'm sorry to use such a basic example, but it's good heuristically. So it's neither related nor related. I don't think gender is socially constructed. That's another school of feminism. Gender as the instrument of abstraction constructs society. That's what I was, constructs culture. That's what I was trying to say. So the two work together without, if you think of gendering as what kind of stuff are we sitting on, then this is not going to work. It's a very different kind of thing. I can't go any further. I've given myself 10 minutes on this one. So now Glissant's ideas about creolization, I loved Edouard Glissant. I knew him well through Asia Jabar. But they are too much based in the Antilles. And if they come out of I feel this also, I just gave Bhartrihari's example. If we are too located in where we were produced and take that as a model for the whole world, I think we are making a mistake. We have to be contained within that because that's the way human beings are. But that's why all of these global predictions and it coming from examples that are, I fault my friend Partho Chatterjee, who's written an extremely powerful book on nationalism as a derivative discourse. He thinks Bengal is India, we're both from Bengal, and then he thinks India is the world. And so therefore that example of nationalism will work for everyone. I think that's the problem with Glissant's idea and all the other ones who are coming up. Maurice Condé doesn't share that problem. But anyway, so when in fact these creolization ideas, including my own over there, come up into the armchair theorizing, I agree with you. We are all armchair theorizing here and spinning our wheels in thin air. So are you, my boy. But the thing is that when it comes up into that area, then it has lost its power as the insistent and constant creolizing that has taken place within structures of power in the world forever. So to an extent, we are using the word creolizing because we are speaking English, but that phenomenon of the appropriation of the language of the master in order to be able to move, it's something that, yes, we can bring it because it's a nice model, but I don't believe that can be, I am very aware of the limits of what one says, which is why I'm in sympathy with Anthony here. Okay, condition of the inculturation as like insubordination, etc., etc. And it's something that I have written, I think in the 1987 book. I'm not asking you to read it, but I remember having written it. You see, is that if you put parentheses around that im or in or whatever, then and you say, and that the parenthesis is not just abstract, it is the understanding of that which holds us back, is that with which we can go forward as long as we know that it is a holder-backer also. So I say there that if you put the parenthesis and then say condition of impossibility, then that is the condition of possibility. There is no other condition of possibility. That, however, I mean, as an activist for a very long time, you know, and activism not only in the academy but outside, I totally am still within this thing, taking the conditions of impossibility and turning them into conditions of possibility, remembering that the impossibility is still inherent there. So
Derrida would say that the two are the same, of course.
well, not quite the same, because the parentheses remain, and that marks the person's interest. I have 2 more minutes. I'm looking at the clock. I won't take very much longer. Okay, now, as for love. Now, how can love be brought into... Now, I won't go with any named religion. Because the history of named religions, I should say this, when I was born in 42, independence in 47. In 46, I entered school, kindergarten, and then in October schools closed. We, Hindus and Muslims in my part of the world, have lived in conflictual coexistence forever. But what happened then were the so-called Hindu-Muslim riots. I lived at one end of the Syed Amir Ali Avenue. So, as a child, 4 years, you know, cry goes up, Allahu Akbar, and then cry goes up, Jai Kali Kalkatte Wali, and each one is with a machete, someone dies. Real blood on the streets. For a little infant, I don't believe in something that is so easily mobilizable into absolute violence. A child took that in. Okay, so I'm not going with anything like that. On the other hand, the idea of whether my writing is open to that kind of stuff, there is a book which really I'm very humble about this. At Drew University, the theologians actually called a conference saying that my work actually gave rise to what they call planetary love, and there's a book from Fordham University Press called Planetary Loves, where I also have a few words, but it's about how my work might open to spiritual stuff. They were all madly smart, so, you know, I just give you that. Okay, I think I should probably end totally now. The one thing is I like metalepsis. I like Kant's metalepsis of putting the effect of grace with it's a paragon of pure reason, the effect of grace with bloße Vernunft, with mere reason, which is morally lazy, in order to einräumen, make room for this. And so metalepsis for me is not just a bad word. And then I don't think modernization is globalization. I don't think the remainder, what is left out, should not be something that we worry about when we translate. I just told the Polish translators, just because supposedly there is no A in Polish, which I don't know that there isn't, but that's what they said to me. That doesn't mean you simply call it anything, because I called it A Critique of Postcolonial Reason, because and they're about to translate it, they'll have to think of something. So, you know, it's just, they'll have to think of something. Language moves. I mean, we know that. We who are not in the better languages, okay. Now, okay, I don't think I'm going to say anything more except general sense and narrow sense. General sense and narrow sense. The general sense of translation, which is like, you know, being born, growing up, etc., it should be clearly distinguished from the narrow senses of translation, which one cannot be an alibi for the other. It's like the agency and whatchamacallit, and subject separateness, okay? We cannot bring that general sense of translatability as such into an alibi for what we are doing, sitting and translating. That's it. And Melanie Klein, you know, the Melanie Klein, in fact, also writes in such a way that birth is death. So she does talk about the intrauterine. I don't have it there. She doesn't talk about it in a way that will give support to people who don't want legalized abortion. So to an extent, this birth as death stuff in Melanie Klein, which is also Simone de Beauvoir describing motherhood as a situation. While you gestate, you are in species life. You are an example of, you cannot love this child. But when you have given birth, you're in species being, child rearing, so that the child can be in excess of the mother is a different project. So to an extent, if one really wants Melanie Klein, it's not just that paragraph that I have kind of summarized. She is very aware of the intrauterine to the extent that she asks us to understand birth itself as a coming into death, and then the part objects and so on. She's a very complicated woman. So therefore, I think I stop here. There were many, many other questions, and I'm very grateful that so many questions were provoked by my incomprehensible mutterings, but I don't think I should go any further. Thank you very much both.